In the beginning, humanity looked to the heavens for answers. Now we build machines to replace them. This is not just a story of science versus scripture. This is the quiet war, waged not with bombs or bullets, but with pixels, propaganda, and programs. A war between NASA, the most powerful space agency on Earth, and God, the divine force that shaped it. For decades, NASA has pushed the boundaries of what we can see, what we can touch, and what we believe. Mars rovers, moon missions, and billion-dollar telescopes. Each breakthrough celebrated as progress. But beneath the surface, something darker stirs. A campaign to redefine creation, to sideline the sacred, and to rewrite the origin of everything. In schools, children are taught that the universe exploded into existence, that Earth is just one of billions of random rocks, that we are alone, that we are accidental. God, once the central pillar of human identity, now reduced to myth in the shadow of science, and the world applauds. But what if it's not just education? What if it's indoctrination? What if we've been led inch by inch away from truth, away from meaning, away from God? Because while satellites orbit, souls decay. While rockets rise, faith falls, and the question no one dares ask echoes louder every day. What if, in our pursuit of the stars, we've lost the very reason we looked up? The war is real, the battlefield is belief, and time is running out. I have literally found God, real, present, and alive. Not just an idea or a feeling, but a true, undeniable presence that changed everything for me. And now, I'm going to reveal our Creator to you. I'm going to create categories and put NASA's world and God's world head to head. In each category, I'll lay out what each side claims and examine how they stand against one another. By doing this, I'll be able to break everything down clearly and directly. The goal is to see which worldview holds up, what actually makes sense, what aligns with truth, and what offers the most complete understanding of reality. NASA's theory. NASA, along with the broader scientific community, believes that the universe began around 13.8 billion years ago with an event known as the Big Bang. This was not an explosion in space, but rather an expansion of space itself from an extremely hot, dense, and tiny point. Over time, matter cooled, forming stars, galaxies, and eventually solar systems like our own. According to this theory, space, time, and all matter emerged from this singularity in a rapid expansion. Not an explosion in space, but an expansion of space itself. As the universe expanded, it cooled, allowing energy to convert into subatomic particles and eventually atoms, forming stars, galaxies, and other cosmic structures. The theory is supported by several key observations, including the cosmic microwave background radiation, the abundance of light elements, and the redshift of galaxies, which all point to an expanding universe that originated from a common beginning. For you to believe in living on a globe, you must believe in this. God's theory. God created the earth in a step-by-step process over 6 days by the power of His Word, meaning He spoke things into existence. Here's a detailed breakdown. Day 1, God created light, separating it from darkness. He called the light day and the darkness night. This marked the beginning of time. Day 2, God created the sky, referred to as the firmament, to separate the waters above from the waters below. Day 3, God gathered the waters under the sky into one place, letting dry land appear, which He called earth, and the gathered waters seas. Then He made plants and trees to grow on the land. Day 4, God created the sun, moon, and stars to give light to the earth and to separate day from night, establishing time through days, seasons, and years. Day 5, God created sea creatures and birds, blessing them to be fruitful and multiply. Day 6, God created land animals, and finally, human beings, male and female, in His image, giving them dominion over the earth and all living things. On the seventh day, God rested, not out of fatigue, but to set a pattern of work and rest. This creation narrative emphasizes that the earth and everything in it was made deliberately, orderly, and with divine purpose. In the next categories, we will compare NASA's theory and God's theory to see what evidence we can find. NASA's theory of gravity. NASA, like the broader scientific community, explains gravity based on Einstein's theory of general relativity. According to this theory, gravity is not a force pulling objects together, as Newton described, but the result of the warping of space-time caused by mass and energy. Massive objects like Earth or the Sun bend the fabric of space-time, and this curvature causes other objects to move toward them, what we experience as gravity. In simple terms, the more massive an object, the more it distorts space-time, and the stronger its gravitational effect. But what we must realize is that gravity is in fact only theoretical and can't be proven. Even the leading scientists of our generation can't explain it.
What is gravity?
You have no idea. Okay, next question.
Wow.
No, here's the difference. We can describe gravity. We can say what it does to other things. We can measure it, predict with it. But when you start asking, like, what it is, I don't know.
So did I accidentally ask a deeper question than I meant to?
Yeah, no, you were meant to ask deep questions.
Apparently I was.
In life. So to say, what is it? I think Einstein, in an Einsteinian answer, we would say gravity is the curvature of space and time. And objects will follow the curvature of space-time, and we interpret that as a force of gravity. That's probably the best answer I can give to a what is gravity question, or why is there gravity. That's the best I can do there. I think that's a good start. And I can also say that Einstein noted that matter tells space how to curve. Did I get that right? Yes. Matter tells space how to curve. Space tells matter how to move.
For you to believe in the globe, you must believe in gravity, as gravity is the only explanation for holding water to a spinning ball. But there's a problem with this theory. Some say gravity is one of the biggest assumptions in modern science, a so-called force that nobody has ever actually seen. You drop an apple, it falls, and scientists just decide that's because of gravity?
Everyone is familiar with Newton and the story about the apple falling on his head. Well, that didn't really happen. The truth is, Newton saw an apple fall from a tree and was in a contemplative mood. At that moment, he wondered why the apple fell straight towards the ground and not sideways or in another direction. He presumed that a force of gravity between two bodies pulled them towards each other with a magnitude directly proportional to their mass, and also inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. The path that the bodies take will be the shortest to minimize energy use, therefore a straight line. In short, Newton believed an apple falls because a gravitational force accelerates it towards the ground. Newton probably thought there was something missing from his theory though, because it said he wasn't completely satisfied with it. This is because he originally thought of the force of gravity as a push, not a pull.
Where's the direct proof? All we have are theories, equations, and invisible fields that conveniently explain why things fall. But none of it can be touched, bottled, or directly observed. That's classic pseudoscience, claiming something exists based on indirect effects, not actual physical evidence.
If you have a claim that can't be tested, that's what we call pseudoscience. The difference between pseudoscience and regular science is whether or not you can test it.
Until someone can show us actual gravity particles or a direct cause, maybe it's time to admit gravity isn't fact. It's just a story we've all agreed to believe. And here's where things get really explosive. Because if we strip gravity from the equation, since it can't be definitively proven, we're not just tweaking a minor detail. We're pulling out the cornerstone of the entire globe model. Without gravity, the whole structure collapses like a house of cards. Everything that follows it, Every theory, every calculation, every explanation crumbles. God's theory of gravity. When you let go of an object in air or water, it moves downward because of how buoyancy, density, and electrostatic forces work together. Buoyancy is an upward push from the surrounding fluid, whether it's a liquid like water or a gas like air, and it depends on how much of that fluid the object pushes out. If the object is heavier, more dense than the fluid around it, it sinks or falls. If it's lighter, it floats or falls more slowly. This applies to air the same way it does to water. For example, a helium balloon rises in air because helium is less dense than air, while a rock falls because it's much denser. Electrostatic forces, tiny pushes or pulls caused by electric charges on the object or in the fluid, can also slightly affect the way the object moves. These effects are scientifically repeatable and always follow the same patterns under the same conditions. Many believe this predictable order shows it was God's intention to create a world with reliable, observable laws, and that belief cannot be disproved by science, since science explains how things happen, but not why such laws exist in the first place.
So they teach us about gravity when we're young kids, because when you're a young kid, you kind of believe everything that you hear. They tell us that gravity was discovered by a guy named Isaac Newton, and by the time he was 23, he had discovered gravity, invented calculus, and trigonometry. Well, I'm telling you right now, none of that happened.
Gravity's just a theory and an excuse, really. It's real simple. If there's a force strong enough to hold oceans to the planet, there's a force. We should all be stuck to the ground. You know, the force can hold buildings, skyscrapers, tanks, ships to it, but it can't hold a helium balloon. Helium balloon just flies away, smoke just flies. Everything should be stuck to the ground like a magnet. If there's a force holding oceans to it, it doesn't make any sense.
Once you look at gravity and you try to prove that it's real, you'll discover there's no proof of it, and that there is only proof of density, buoyancy, and electrostatics.
Electrostatics is a proven thing. We all know that a positive and a negative will attract towards each other. So the Earth has a neutral or negative charge. Everything above it has a positive charge, and it is attracted to it.
Everything that exists is electric. There's not one thing that exists in the entire world that is not electric. It's actually the unifying force that keeps everything here, holds everything together, and everything seeks equilibrium based on that. So everything's trying to find a state of rest based on its electric phenomena or its electric nature within the environment that we exist within. And then when you start to look further into it, you find out that on the smallest scale, electrostatics is significantly stronger than gravity is even claimed to be. Magnitudes greater, 10 to the 36 power to be specific. So everything, simply put, everything that exists is electric. Everything that is falling to the ground or not falling to the ground is seeking equilibrium based on electrostatics. We can actually test this. We can use something called a corona motor, and whenever we manipulate electrostatics, we can make things levitate. We can make things go up or down, and we can actually change how fast they go down. We can also manipulate the weight of an object simply by manipulating electrostatics. And of course, that's how science actually works, is you do an experiment that shows you what the cause of the effect is, and you can manipulate electrostatics and cause the effect of downward acceleration, commonly referred to as gravity. Of course, I've never seen a test that manipulates space-time, and you will never see that. It doesn't exist. Everyone thinks that the reason things fall is because of gravity, but actually everything that exists is electrostatic. So whenever things go to the ground, they're seeking equilibrium, so they go find their balance on the ground where their charge disperses or spreads out in through the ground. So we have positive charge in the air, we have negative charge on the surface of the earth or on the ground, which is why it's called grounding, and then we introduced positive charge and then it went back down to the ground to seek equilibrium. This shows that that's actually what objects do when they fall to the ground. They go to the ground because of the electric forces and they seek equilibrium on the earth.
We knew about it as in the 1950s, even earlier, and it's all been hidden because if humans were allowed free energy, free movement, and able to explore, we would find out what this place is. We'd find out our position in this world. And that's the number one thing. Why are they hiding flat Earth? Why? What's the motive? And the motive is to keep us dumbed down, not knowing who we are, not knowing where we are, not knowing the true power that we have, and not having true freedom.
Now we must take the theory to court and examine our evidence. Let's begin with the first topic: NASA's theory of gravity versus God's theory of gravity. If we were to put this debate into a court of law and judge it strictly on the basis of repeatable, observable evidence, as is required in scientific and legal standards, NASA's theory, which includes models like the Big Bang and evolution, currently lacks direct, repeatable scientific proof for the origin of Earth. None of it can be recreated or tested in real time. On the other hand, proponents of God's theory argue that the existence of life, order, and consciousness serves as at least one form of observable evidence for intelligent design. From this standpoint, God's theory of gravity would present one piece of evidence, while NASA's theory offers none that meet the criteria of repeatable science. One piece of evidence in God's file, 0 pieces of evidence in NASA's file. It's important to recognize that NASA's entire model, including the idea that we live on a rotating globe in space, fundamentally depends on the existence of gravity. However, as demonstrated by repeatable scientific experiments, gravity remains a theory that has not been conclusively proven. According to NASA, the sun's movement in the sky is caused by Earth's spin and its orbit around the sun. Earth spins at about 1,037 miles per hour at the equator, which makes the sun appear to rise and set each day. It also orbits the sun at about 66,600 miles per hour, causing the seasons. The sun itself moves around the center of the Milky Way galaxy at about 514,000 miles per hour. The entire Milky Way galaxy is also flying through space at roughly 1.3 million miles per hour. Even though everything is moving at incredible speeds, we don't feel it because it's all happening smoothly and constantly. God's theory of the sun, as explained in the Book of Enoch and as we observe in day-to-day life,
and of the moon, from whence they came and to which they return, and their glorious return, and how one is more glorious than the other, and their fixed course, and how they do not leave their course, and how they add nothing to their course, and take nothing from it, and preserve their fidelity one with the other, remaining steadfast in their oath. And first the sun goes out, and makes his way according to the command of the Lord of the spirits, and strong is his name to all eternity. And after this the hidden and the revealed course of the moon, completing the course of her way in that place by day and by night, one looking at the other before the Lord of the spirits, and they give thanks and praise and do not rest, for their thanksgiving is rest for them. For the shining sun makes many changes for a blessing and for a curse, and for the course of the path of the moon is light to the just and darkness to the sinners in the name of the Lord, who created a separation between light and darkness, and divided the spirits of men, and strengthened the spirits of the just in the name of his own justice. For neither does an angel hinder, nor is any power able to hinder, for the judge sees them all and judges them all before him.
What we see is a local sun that is taking its local light with it. What happened to the horizon glowing across half of the world? Most sunsets are already fading through pollution, dander, chemtrails, and fog. Plus, refraction will always make the sun seem like it's going down, as well as your perspective.
It would appear to sink down in your field of view. That's perspective. The further away you get from it, the lower it will appear. It doesn't physically change its height, it just appears that way to your eyes, until eventually it will disappear behind the horizon formed by your eye's vanishing point. Your eye has an angular resolution of 0.2 degrees. and anything at that height will disappear beyond the limit of your sight. Many times we can see time-lapse footage of the sun that shows it getting smaller as it moves away from us. Now, that's not always the case, since the sun is travelling around the North Pole. The closer you are to the north, the less you'll see the size change. But from locations beyond the equator, you'll absolutely see the sun's size change. And that could never ever happen if the sun was 93 million miles away. You wouldn't see the sun change at all.
Our eyes cannot see farther than what they were designed to see, but that is no reason to keep them closed.
There's also an effect that occurs under certain conditions called atmospheric lensing, where the sheer amount of atmosphere, as well as the rain between you and the sun, acts like a lens and a prism, magnifying it greatly, which leads to another observational proof that the sun setting is an optical effect. At such times, when the sun is setting over the sea, and it seems as though it's half hidden by the horizon, then you can zoom in with a high-powered zoom camera and see that it's actually still above the horizon. It's just an optical illusion.
Pay attention to the sun rays here. This alone proves our local sun, and so do these shadows.
Now we must take the theory to court and examine our evidence. NASA's theory of the sun is based on the idea that gravity plays a critical role in its structure and behavior. According to this theory, gravity is responsible for holding together the sun's massive ball of gas, preventing it from dispersing into the vacuum of space. However, space is a vacuum, meaning there is no air or material medium to exert any outward pressure that might counteract the force of gravity. This raises the question of how such a massive gas body could remain stable without gravity, as it would theoretically spread out if gravity didn't exist. Additionally, because the sun is located so far away from Earth, direct experiments or observations to test this theory are not feasible for the general public or even most scientists. As a result, people must rely on institutions like NASA, which have the resources and technology to study the sun and propose these theories, to understand and believe in the workings of the sun. Furthermore, if the sun were indeed 93 million miles away, as commonly stated, the rays of light would enter Earth's atmosphere vertically, creating direct beams. However, we observe the rays coming in at an angle, which suggests that the sun's light might be local rather than coming from such a distant source. In contrast, God's theory of creation, as understood by many, can be observed directly in the world around us. The cycle of day and night, the changing seasons, and the rising and setting of the sun are all visible and consistent phenomena that can be tracked with the human eye year after year, offering a tangible and observable experience of the sun's behavior. Unlike the theoretical models proposed by NASA, these natural occurrences do not require advanced experiments or reliance on distant scientific institutions. Additionally, what we commonly describe as the sun rising and setting appears, upon closer observation, to be the sun moving farther away and then returning, rather than physically rising from below and setting below the horizon. That's 2 pieces of evidence in God's case file, and 0 pieces of evidence in NASA's case file that could be used in the court of law. NASA's theory of the seasons. While it may seem like Earth's distance from the sun could affect the seasons, NASA clarifies that this distance actually changes very little throughout the year and is not responsible for the seasons. In fact, Earth is closest to the sun in early January, during winter in the northern hemisphere, and farthest in early July, during summer in the southern hemisphere, which proves that distance isn't the main factor. The real cause is the tilt of Earth's axis, not how close it is to the sun. Additionally, Earth rotates once every 24 hours, causing day and night, but this rotation does not cause the seasons. When one side of Earth faces the sun, it experiences daytime, while the other side has nighttime. However, this rotation doesn't change the tilt of the axis. For example, if it's winter in the northern hemisphere, even during the daytime it will still be winter, because that part of Earth is tilted away from the sun and receives less direct sunlight. Meanwhile, the southern hemisphere, tilted toward the sun, experiences summer at the same time. This pattern stays consistent throughout the day and only changes gradually over months as Earth orbits the Sun. It's like saying that standing closest to a bonfire somehow makes you feel colder, but if you tilt your body, it suddenly feels like summer. Then, as you move further away from the fire, it gets warmer, unless you tilt your body again, in which case it feels colder. None of it makes sense, especially considering that gravity is essential for any of it to work in the first place. God's theory of the seasons. On God's Earth, seasons would occur due to the Sun moving in a circular path above the Earth's surface, shifting its position throughout the year. The Earth would be a flat disk with the North Pole at the center and the outer edge surrounded by an ice wall, often referred to as Antarctica in this model. The Sun, rather than being 93 million miles away, would be much smaller and closer, typically described as around 3,000 miles above the surface, and would move in concentric circles over the Earth. During the Northern Hemisphere's summer, the Sun would trace a smaller, tighter circle closer to the North Pole, concentrating its light and heat over the inner parts of the disk, resulting in longer days and warmer temperatures in the north. As the year progresses, the Sun would spiral outward to a larger circular path closer to the outer edge, which would shift its focus and cause summer in the southern hemisphere, while the northern regions experience winter. The gradual inward and outward spiral of the Sun's path would create the effect of changing seasons, as different regions receive varying intensities and durations of sunlight, depending on the Sun's distance and angle in the sky.
We have the Arctic Circle, closest to the center, the Tropic of Cancer at 23.5 degrees latitude in the northern hemisphere, the Equator at 0 degree latitude, the Tropic of Capricorn at 23.5 degrees latitude in the southern hemisphere, and the Antarctic Circle. The Sun journeys from the equator at the March equinox up in concentric spirals to the Tropic of Cancer. When the Sun is in this position, the northern hemisphere experiences summer and the southern hemisphere experiences winter, after which the Sun turns and begins making its way back to the equator. The word tropic stems from the Latin word tropicus, which means pertaining to a turn. The Sun journeys back, taking the same concentric spiral path, and reaches the equator again. It then keeps going and reaches the Tropic of Capricorn. When the Sun is in this position, the southern hemisphere experiences summer, and the northern hemisphere experiences winter. After a time, the Sun turns and begins making its way back to the equator for the March equinox. The equinox occurs when the Sun is journeying the circle of the equator, and those living along this line of latitude will see the Sun directly overhead at a 90-degree angle at solar noon. The March equinox marks a season of spring in the northern hemisphere, and the September equinox marks a season of autumn. If you live in the southern hemisphere, this is reversed, and the September equinox marks spring and the March equinox autumn. It is important to note that the Sun never reaches the Arctic Circle, nor does it reach the Antarctic Circle. It never reaches the poles. It journeys to the tropic circles and then turns back. The point at which the Sun reaches its most northerly and southerly excursion relative to the equator is called the solstice. Solstice comes from the Latin word solstitium, which means point at which the Sun seems to stand still. And indeed, many do note that the Sun seems to stop on the solstices. And this is because, in a sense, it does. It reaches the most northerly and southerly excursion and turns back. But why the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn? Who names these circles of latitude? Our historical ancestors did. They had clocks that not only told them the seconds of the hour, the hours in the day, but also the moment of dusk and dawn and the current phase of the moon. Their clocks understood the true time, the bigger picture. They understood the celestial clock. The stars above us, beyond our firmament, and in the waters above, revolve at a constant 1 degree every 4 minutes, from east to west, that is, anti-clockwise. This means they revolve at 15 degrees each hour. 15 degrees multiplied by 24 hours is 360. A full circle. The stars above are fixed. They do not stray from their anti-clockwise journey, but revolve and complete a full circle every day. Our ancient, historical ancestors knew this. They assigned the stars above into fixed constellations. They divided the 360-degree circle of the sky above into 12 divisional arcs of 30 degrees, in which each constellation of the zodiac resides in. They designated each constellation in each 30-degree arc with an anthropomorphic symbol, most of which are animals. Zodiac is an interesting word. Zodiac, the arcs of the zoo. Yes, the parallels with Noah's Ark are strikingly obvious. Each constellation of the zodiac moves from its fixed position in the waters above at 1 degree every 72 years. The stars in the circle above us are fixed in their positions, but every 72 years, the entire circle shifts 1 degree. This is what is called the precession of the equinox. Remember, each arc is 30 degrees. If we multiply 72 with 30, we get 2,160 years. It takes 2,160 years for the circle above to shift 1 whole arc. Astronomers call this an age, and this is what is meant by entering or the dawn of a new age.
Now we must take the theory to court and examine our evidence. Comparing NASA's theory of seasons to the flat Earth theory, one could argue that NASA's explanation, based on Earth's axial tilt and its orbit around the Sun, faces challenges when stripped of the concept of gravity. According to NASA, the axial tilt causes varying angles of sunlight to hit different parts of the Earth throughout the year, resulting in seasons. However, without gravity to maintain Earth's orbit and tilt, there is no clear explanation for why these factors would remain consistent and produce regular seasons year after year. If we exclude gravity, one might struggle to explain why Earth's axis stays tilted at a consistent 23.5-degree angle without any external forces acting on it, and why Earth maintains its orbit around the Sun in the first place. On the other hand, the flat Earth model, based on observable patterns in the stars and sky, presents a simpler explanation for the changing seasons. In this model, the Sun's movement is often described as a smaller, localized object moving in a circular path above the flat Earth. The Sun's position and apparent height in the sky change over the course of the year, creating the seasonal variations in temperature and daylight hours. This model aligns more directly with what we observe in the night sky, the Sun's apparent path shifting and the constellations' positions changing with the seasons. The regularity of the Sun's position and the sky's patterns can be directly observed by anyone, making the flat Earth explanation seem more intuitive and grounded in everyday experience. Therefore, when taking gravity and unseen forces out of the equation, flat Earth theory offers a simpler, more observable framework for understanding seasonal changes. 3 pieces of evidence in God's file. 0 pieces of evidence so far in NASA's file. To be continued.
So what about the moon? We all witness the moon only illuminating the local clouds around it. That is because it is also a local light, but one with opposite effects from the sun. As we can all agree, shade from the sun is cooler than direct sunlight. But did you know the moon's shade is actually warmer than direct moonlight?
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened.
The moon produces cold light, something the science priests must have forgotten to teach us all about in school. Not only that, but at times we can see stars through the moon, proving it is not some solid rock 238,900 miles away.
After 50 years of lying to humanity and perpetrating this giant fraud, he's sick of the lie, and his conscience, he had a moment of humility, and his conscience wouldn't let him lie to this little 8-year-old girl. This silly globe model with water magically attached to it, spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, shooting around the sun at 66,000 miles an hour, and rocketing through the universe at 500,000 miles an hour is just the goofiest, silly thing that I've ever heard in my life. They want you to think you're a monkey man, a purposeless accident created by nothing, that exploded from a big bang that was created not by scientists, by a priest, mind you, while they steal $58 million a day in taxpayers' money to show you cartoons, CGI. They just have to show you enough of Hollywood and magic tricks and for you to believe the nonsense. It shocks me how many people actually believe they're floating above our heads. It's all filmed here on Earth. Outer space is a fantasy. You can literally see bubbles coming up from these astronauts' helmets. It's ridiculous. When I saw it, I was like, this is a joke.
Even Google mentioned it during their commercial. Do you remember this? Why would Google be promoting this?
Zoom up to Venus, zoom up to Mars, and you will see they are lights. They are stars. Hence all the intelligent pre-Copernican astrologers, Ptolemaic astrologers like myself, taught that all the planets are wandering stars. They are luminous bodies. Just as the Egyptians said, just as the Greeks and the Mayans and the Aztecs said, just as our intelligent ancestors said.
A lot of stuff on the flat Earth.
Okay, yeah. True.
That's true?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, cool.
All right.
God bless, brother.
Did you notice any curvature while we were up there?
Curvature? No.
No? There's no curvature?
It's just all flat.
Casey, how are you, mate? Pleased to meet you guys. There's no way there's curvature. We're round and flat, aren't we?
Definitely.
We are, aren't we? Thank you.
Flat as a pancake.
We never feel the plane dipping its nose down. We only feel the landing. Which flight route matches reality in your mind? If you chose the left, you may need medical attention. Everything beneath you while flying is level and motionless. Just as expected, flying over a stationary plane. Most pilots may have skipped over their training manuals. In their Flight Dynamics Summary, Section 112 explains all you'll need to know about what you're flying over. Heck, the military knows the same thing. NASA admits it as well. In tons of documents available to the public. They just assumed nobody would pay attention.
An interesting rocket launch was the amateur Go Fast rocket. They gave us something that NASA and SpaceX never gives us, an uninterrupted feed from their camera. If you watch a NASA launch or a SpaceX launch, there's 4, 5, 6 cuts before it even clears the launch pad. Gave us an uninterrupted 72 miles, I think. Went up, and all of a sudden it went kerplunk, it hit something.
It went up, and it appears to have hit the firmament.
One thing I really want your generation to embrace is that the Earth is a closed system. We cannot leave the Earth.
There's no place to go.